Welcome to Sleepy Science Wonders. This is a harbor for the curious. For those who ask questions late at night. For those who lie awake feeling something turning inside them, something they can't quite name. For those who want to understand themselves a little more deeply. I'm glad you found your way here. Before we begin this journey, if you'd like to stay, to come back, to let these stories find you again, you can subscribe to Sleepy Science Wonders. And if tonight's exploration moves something in you, leaving a like helps these words reach others who might be quietly looking for the same thing. And now, let's let the outside world begin to soften. Whatever the day held, the noise, the to-do lists, the conversations that played and replayed in your mind, let all of it slowly move to the edges. You don't need to solve anything right now. You don't need to be anywhere else. Just here. Just this. Right now, in this silence. You are feeling something. Maybe it's tiredness. The comfortable, heavy kind that settles into the limbs after a long day. Maybe it's something quieter, a low hum of worry, or the faint warmth of relief that the day is finally over. Maybe it's curiosity. A gentle leaning towards something just out of reach. Or maybe it's something you genuinely cannot name. Something that's simply, there. Present. Real. But without a word attached to it yet. That's exactly where we're starting. That wordless, honest, immediate feeling, whatever it is for you right now, is the doorway into everything we're going to explore together. If someone asked you, what is an emotion? What would you say? Most people pause when asked this. It's something I feel, they might say. Or, it's what happens inside me. Or they bring a hand to the chest, pressing gently there, as if the answer lives just beneath the sternum, in that warm space between the ribs. And maybe it does. Because emotions don't begin as definitions. They begin as experience. They arrive before the words do. They move through the body before the mind can catch up and label them. But science has been looking at emotions for a long time now. Carefully. From many angles. And what it has found, layer by layer, is something extraordinary. Consider this for a moment. Your brain, right now as you listen, is processing an almost incomprehensible amount of information. Light levels. Sounds near and far. The temperature of the air on your skin. The weight of your body against whatever is holding you. Signals rising from your stomach, your lungs, your heartbeat. The faint electrical hum of your nervous system doing its quiet, ceaseless work. And beyond the body, social signals, patterns, threats, possibilities. The meaning behind a tone of voice heard earlier today. The unfinished shape of something you're hoping for. The shadow of something you're afraid of. All of this, happening simultaneously, every second. And here's the thing, your conscious mind can't access most of it. The processing is too fast, too layered, too vast for awareness to reach all the way down into it. But the brain is doing something with all of that information. It's making sense of it. Sorting it. Weighing it against everything it has learned from every experience you've ever had. And then it surfaces a summary. Not a report. Not a list of facts. Something faster and more immediate than that. A feeling. Emotion, at its most fundamental level, is a message. Something your brain is telling you about your situation, about the world around you, the people near you, the state of your own body, the direction of your life. This is safe, it might say. Or, this person can be trusted. Or, something here requires your attention. Or, this matters to you, don't look away. These messages were not luxuries in the history of our species. They were survival tools. The ancestor who felt fear when the grass rustled moved faster. The ancestor who felt connection formed bonds that lasted. The ancestor who felt grief honored what had been lost. The ancestor who felt joy was drawn toward what nourished life. Every emotion had a function. Every feeling served a purpose. And though the world we live in now looks almost nothing like the world those ancestors inhabited, the emotional system they passed down to us remains. Refined across millions of years. Encoded in the very structure of the brain. Emotions were, and still are, the language of being alive. Bring your attention gently to your body now. Not to change anything. Just to notice. Feel where you are, sitting, lying, curled or stretched. Notice the weight of your limbs. The slight rise and fall of the breath. The contact between your body and the surface beneath you. And somewhere in there, something is present. Maybe in the chest. A warmth, a tightness, a fullness, an openness. Maybe around the stomach. That soft, sometimes fluttery place where so many feelings seem to live. Maybe in the throat. Or the shoulders. Or in the space just behind the eyes. Emotions don't only live in the mind. They live in the body. This is something science has confirmed again and again, and something you have likely sensed your whole life without needing anyone to tell you. Neuroscientist Antonio Damasio spent decades exploring the relationship between emotion and the body, emotion and decision-making, emotion and what it means to be a person. He worked with patients who had suffered specific kinds of brain damage, damage that left their logical and analytical abilities completely intact, but disrupted the way they processed and integrated emotional signals. These were intelligent people. They could reason clearly. They could understand complex problems. They could calculate, analyze, compare. But they could not decide. Not even simple things. What to order at a restaurant. Which day to schedule a follow-up appointment. Whether to wear the blue shirt or the gray one. Faced with choices that most of us navigate without a second thought, they would become paralyzed. They would list the pros and cons endlessly. They would reason in circles. They could not settle on an answer. Because to make a decision, you need to feel that one option matters more than another. And without the emotional signal, without that quiet pull toward one thing and away from another, nothing carries weight. Emotion isn't the opposite of reason. Emotion is what makes reason meaningful. Hold that thought gently for a moment. Without emotion, there is no meaning. Think about the things that matter most to you. The people you love. The work you care about. The memories that stay with you. The losses that changed you. The small moments that made you pause and think, yes, this is what life is. None of that significance exists without feeling. The value you place on another person, how do you know it's real? You feel it. The sense that a decision is right or wrong, where does that come from? You feel it. The knowledge that something precious is at stake, how does that register? Through feeling. This is what Damasio's research revealed. Not just a biological curiosity, but something deeply true about the nature of human experience. Feeling is not decoration layered over thinking. Feeling is the ground everything else stands on. But the story of emotion doesn't stop at biology. It doesn't stop at evolution. Because human beings did something with their emotions that no other species has done in quite the same way. They named them. And that act of naming, giving language to inner experience, changed everything. Psychologist Lisa Feldman Barrett spent years asking a question that seems simple on the surface: are emotions universal, or are they shaped by culture and language? Are fear and joy and anger the same everywhere? Do all humans feel the same things? Her research led her to a nuanced and surprising answer. Some of what happens in the body during emotion is indeed universal. The acceleration of the heart, the shift in breathing, the cascade of chemical signals, the heightened alertness or the pull toward rest. The body's responses are ancient and shared. But the interpretation, the act of reaching into that swirl of physical sensation and saying, this is grief, or this is hope, or this is embarrassment, that is constructed. Learned. Shaped by culture, language, and experience. The words we have for emotions are not just labels applied to pre-existing things. They are part of how those things come to exist as distinct, knowable experiences. There is a Japanese word, ame. It has no direct equivalent in English. It describes the feeling of leaning into someone you trust, completely, without reservation, knowing they will hold you. The ease of being in another's warmth. The comfort of being allowed to depend, to rest, to not have to hold everything together for a moment. You have felt this, most likely. Some version of it. But without a word for it, the feeling stays softer at the edges. Less easy to recognize, to call by name, to return to intentionally. Japanese children learn this word early. They learn to identify the feeling it describes. And research suggests that having that word gives them a kind of emotional fluency, a quicker route to recognizing and articulating something important about connection and safety. Language doesn't create emotions. But language gives them shape. Gives them edges. Makes them easier to hold. And this matters in ways that reach into health, into well-being, into the texture of daily life. Research consistently shows that people with a larger emotional vocabulary, people who can distinguish not just, I feel bad, but, I feel disappointed, versus, I feel ashamed, versus, I feel exhausted, versus, I feel afraid, experience less anxiety, less impulsivity, fewer physical symptoms of stress. Because when you can name what's happening inside you, you can work with it. You can sit beside it. You can recognize it as something familiar and survivable. You can understand what it's asking of you. The unnamed feeling doesn't disappear. But it does become harder to navigate. Like trying to find your way through a room in complete darkness, versus a room where someone has left a single candle burning. Let an image settle in the theater of your mind. A river. Wide and deep and unhurried. Dark water catching light in certain places, moving in ways you can't fully predict, shaped by everything that has fed into it upstream. This river runs through you. It always has. Since before you had any way to understand it or describe it. Since the very beginning. Sometimes it has flooded, those overwhelming moments when feeling poured over its banks and you couldn't tell where you ended and the emotion began. Sometimes it has run low and still. Those times when you knew something was there, beneath the surface, but you couldn't reach it or name it. But it never stopped. It never ran dry. Emotions don't stop. And this, I want to say clearly, is not a problem. It can feel like one. We are often taught that it is one. That feelings are disruptions, obstacles, signs of weakness or instability. But the river running through you is not a malfunction. It is the sign that your brain is doing exactly what it was shaped to do. Interpreting the world. Protecting you. Orienting you toward what matters. Pulling you toward connection and away from harm. Feeling things deeply is not a burden you happen to inherit. It is the gift of a system that has been refined over millions of years to help you live, to help you survive and connect and find meaning and navigate loss and recognize beauty and understand other people. Over the course of these 12 chapters, we'll follow this river into different territories. We'll stand at the edge of fear and understand what the ancient guardian in the brain has always been doing. We'll trace the chemistry of desire and discover why wanting is more powerful than having. We'll look closely at tears and learn what the body releases when it cries. We'll explore the conversation happening between the heart and the brain, a conversation more complex and more constant than most of us ever knew. We'll look at how we feel another person's pain. We'll ask where joy actually lives in the body. We'll look honestly at anger, and at what it protects. We'll follow memory into its deepest places. We'll sit with loneliness and understand what it's really asking for. And we'll come, finally, to love, its chemistry, its structure, its strange and sustaining power. At the center of all of it, a single truth. To feel is to exist. Right now, in this moment, come back to your body. That weight. That warmth or coolness. That soft movement of the breath. And whatever is there, the tiredness, the warmth, the hum of something you can't quite name. Let it be there. You don't have to solve it or explain it or push it away. Just recognize it. This river is yours. And tonight, you are sitting quietly at its edge. You sat a little longer at the river's edge. And something shifted, perhaps. The breath came a little slower. The shoulders released a fraction. The mind, which had been moving quickly through the day, began to find a different pace. That's where we are now. Not leaving, just moving deeper. Following the water towards something older, something that has been waiting at the bottom of this river long before you ever arrived. There is a structure in the brain that predates language. That predates complex thought. That predates almost everything we associate with being human. It has been watching over living creatures for hundreds of millions of years. And right now, at this very moment, it is watching over you. Think back to a moment. It doesn't have to be dramatic, it happens to all of us, when something startled you. A sound in the night. A shadow at the edge of your vision. A sudden movement you didn't expect. And before you understood what it was, before you had even formed a coherent thought about it, your body had already reacted. Heart slamming hard against the chest. Breath pulling sharply in. Muscles contracting. Every nerve suddenly singing. You didn't choose that. You didn't decide to be afraid. The decision, if you could even call it that, happened somewhere far below the reach of your conscious mind. That's the amygdala. Two small, almond-shaped clusters of neurons, nestled deep within each hemisphere of the brain, just behind and slightly above the ears. Small in size. Disproportionately powerful. The word comes from the Greek for almond, and indeed, if you could hold one in your hand, that's what it would resemble. Something you could close your fingers around completely. Something that seems too small to carry so much weight. But the amygdala is the brain's primary threat detection system. And it is extraordinarily, almost improbably, efficient. Here is how it works, and this part matters, because understanding it changes how you relate to the fear responses you carry. When a stimulus enters your awareness, a sound, a visual signal, a smell, the tone in someone's voice, even a facial expression glimpsed for a fraction of a second, that information immediately begins traveling through the brain. There are two paths it can take. The first is the long path. The signal moves through the thalamus to the cortex, to the thinking, reasoning, analyzing parts of the brain. There it is evaluated carefully. Context is considered. Past experience is consulted. The question is asked, is this actually dangerous? And a measured, nuanced response is formulated. The second is the short path. The signal moves from the thalamus directly to the amygdala, bypassing the cortex almost entirely. The amygdala receives raw, unprocessed information. Not a full picture, just a rough outline, and makes a decision in milliseconds. Not a reasoned decision. An ancient one. This is why you flinch before you know why. This is why your body tightens when a voice becomes harsh before your mind has processed the words. This is why looking down from a great height makes your legs feel suddenly unreliable, even when you are standing on solid, safe ground. The amygdala doesn't wait for the cortex to finish its analysis. It can't afford to. It was never designed to. Let your mind drift back across the whole of human history. Not to cities or civilizations, but much further. To open grasslands and dense forests. To small groups of people moving through landscapes full of things that could kill them. Imagine for a moment that you are there. The sun is going down. The light is fading. And somewhere in the tall grass to your left, something moves. In that moment, you have two options available to you. The first, pause. Observe carefully. Collect more information. Reason through the possible explanations. Decide on an appropriate response. The second, react. Immediately, automatically, without deliberation. If what's in that grass is a predator, the first option ends your story right there. The amygdala evolved to guarantee the second option. To make certain that before the cortex had finished asking its careful questions, the body was already in motion. Fast. Sensitive. Sometimes wrong. Because not every rustle in the grass is a predator. But the calculus was clear, the cost of a false alarm is a racing heart and a moment of unnecessary fear. The cost of a missed alarm is death. Evolution will always favor the nervous system that fires too easily over the one that fires too slowly. Neuroscientist Joseph Ledoux spent much of his career mapping the amygdala and its role in fear. His work transformed how neuroscience understands this tiny structure. In one landmark series of experiments, he studied rats whose amygdalae had been damaged. These animals could learn normally in many ways. Their memory, their movement, their ability to navigate a maze all remained intact. But they could not learn fear. Normally, a rat will quickly learn to associate a neutral sound with an unpleasant stimulus. After just a few pairings, hearing that sound alone causes the rat to freeze. To enter a state of vigilant, motionless alertness that is the rat's instinctive response to perceived danger. The rats with amygdala damage heard the sound and felt nothing. They moved through the world without the alarm system that kept other animals safe. And Ledoux's observation was important: these animals weren't calmer, or more contented, or in any meaningful sense better off. They were more vulnerable. More exposed. Less equipped to navigate a world that does, in fact, contain real threats. Fear wasn't the enemy of a good life. Fear was one of the things that made life possible. Come gently to your body now. This is just an invitation, not an instruction. There's nothing you need to do here. But if you're willing, bring a soft awareness to the places in your body where you tend to hold tension. The shoulders, perhaps. The jaw. The area around the stomach. The chest. Notice if anything is gathered there right now. And then consider, when was the last time that tightening arrived unexpectedly? When did your body go into some version of alert before your conscious mind had caught up? Maybe it was in a crowd that grew suddenly loud. Maybe it was reading a message on your phone, the anxious spike before you even registered the words. Maybe it was in an ordinary conversation, when something in the other person's expression shifted and your nervous system registered it before you could articulate what you'd seen. The amygdala learns from experience. Every significant threat you've ever encountered, every moment of real danger or deep fear, has left its trace in this small structure. It has catalogued them. It refers to them constantly, comparing current input against its library of what has hurt before. And it doesn't forget easily. This is what researchers call emotional memory, and it is fundamentally different from the kind of memory that allows you to recall events in sequence, to narrate your history. The hippocampus stores the story of what happened. The amygdala stores the feeling. Not, on that day, in that place, this occurred, but the raw emotional charge of the experience. The way the body felt in that moment. The signal that said, pay attention, this is dangerous, remember this. And because the amygdala stores feeling rather than narrative, it can be activated by fragments. By pieces of the original experience that appear in new contexts. A particular quality of light. A smell. A posture. The rhythm of someone's footsteps in a hallway. Something in the way a sentence is phrased. The amygdala recognizes the pattern before you consciously do, and the alarm begins to sound. You find yourself tense, or sad, or suddenly afraid, and you can't immediately explain why. The explanation is there. It's simply stored somewhere below the level of conscious access. This mechanism was exquisitely calibrated for the environments our ancestors navigated. The threats were physical. The dangers were immediate. And the ability to respond to them quickly, automatically, without deliberation, was the difference between survival and its absence. But here is the challenge we carry. The amygdala cannot fully distinguish between a threat to the body and a threat to the self. To status, to belonging, to the image we hold of our own worth. It cannot distinguish between a predator and a difficult conversation. Between physical danger and social anxiety. Between a lion and an unanswered email that sits in your inbox carrying the weight of everything unresolved. The response is similar. Cortisol rises. The heart rate climbs. The body prepares for action it will never take, against a threat it cannot fight or flee. This is not a malfunction. The system is doing what it was built to do, applying ancient tools to modern problems that are, in evolutionary terms, extremely new. But knowing this, truly understanding it, creates a small but significant shift. Because the amygdala fires fast. But the cortex, the thinking brain, can follow. When the alarm sounds, there is a choice available, not immediately, not automatically, but available. One breath. One pause. The quiet, deliberate question. Is there actual danger here, right now, in this moment? Not the danger of the past. Not the imagined danger of some future. Here. Now. That question lengthens the short path just a fraction. And in that fraction, something opens. Researchers have found something remarkable about the act of naming emotion. When study participants were shown images designed to trigger fear or anxiety, their amygdala activation was visible and measurable in brain scans. But when participants were asked to label what they felt, to say, even internally, this is fear, or, I notice anxiety, the amygdala activity decreased. Not because the emotion went away, but because the cortex was now involved. The thinking brain had entered the conversation. And the alarm system, recognizing that something larger was now attending to the situation, relaxed slightly. Language, the act of naming, is a neurological tool. Not a way of dismissing feeling. A way of working with it. Let your breath be easy now. In through the nose, if that's comfortable. Slowly. Let the belly rise before the chest. And slowly out. Longer than the in-breath, if you can. Once more. This simple rhythm, this deliberate, gentle breath, is one of the few things that can reach the amygdala directly from the place of conscious intention. Because breathing exists at the intersection of the automatic and the chosen. It happens without you, until you decide to change it. And a slow, deliberate exhalation sends a signal through the vagus nerve to the nervous system as a whole: we are safe. We can rest. The alarm is not needed right now. The watcher hears this signal. And slowly, gradually, begins to stand down. The watcher in the dark is not your enemy. I want to stay with this thought, because it matters. In a culture that often treats fear as weakness, as something to be overcome or outgrown or medicated away, it can be easy to develop a complicated relationship with your own alarm system. To feel frustration at its sensitivity. To wish it were different. To be exhausted by how vigilant it can be. But consider what it has done for you. Every moment of fear that moved you out of real danger. Every hesitation that kept you from a genuine mistake. Every tightening in the stomach that was the first signal of something worth attending to. The watcher was there for all of it. Bring to mind, for a moment, an image. A long corridor, dimly lit. At the far end of it, a small figure. Alert, watchful, tired perhaps, but never sleeping. Never fully off duty. This figure hears everything. Notices every shift in the light, every change in sound, every variation in temperature. It has been doing this, without rest, for your entire life. It doesn't always read situations perfectly. Sometimes it sounds the alarm when the alarm isn't needed. Sometimes it carries old wounds into new places and sees danger where there is none. But it has always been trying to do one thing. To make sure you continue. Tonight, as you settle into this quiet, you can look at that watcher a little differently than you might have before. Not with frustration. Not with the wish that it were less vigilant, less sensitive, less prone to fire. But with something that might, over time, grow into a kind of grateful recognition. This ancient structure has been standing guard your entire life. It was there before you had words. Before you had a self to speak of. And it is still here. Still watching. Still, in its imperfect and devoted way, trying to keep you safe. You've met the watcher now. The one who stands at the threshold, who has been standing there since before you knew it was there, who listens in the dark with tireless devotion. And as you rest with that knowledge, as something in you perhaps softens toward that ancient, devoted structure, we move a little further into the brain. Because while the amygdala watches for what could harm you, another system is constantly scanning for something else entirely. Not danger. Not threat. Possibility. Something worth moving toward. Something worth reaching for. Something just over the next horizon that might, the brain whispers, always, be worth everything it takes to get there. Have you ever noticed that the wanting of something can feel more alive than the having of it? You spend weeks anticipating a trip. Every detail imagined, tasted in advance. The days count down and the feeling inside counts up, building and building toward that morning when you finally leave. And then you're there. And it's wonderful, perhaps. Genuinely. A real and precious experience. But something about the sheer electric aliveness of the waiting isn't quite there anymore. Or you wait for news. Good news, the kind you've been hoping for. And when it arrives, there is a moment of brightness, a rush of relief. But already, almost immediately, the mind is moving on. Searching for the next thing. Looking toward the next uncertainty, the next hope, the next possibility still unresolved. This is not a personal failing. This is the architecture of desire itself. Dopamine is one of the most discussed chemicals in contemporary conversation about the brain, and perhaps one of the most misunderstood. It is almost universally called the pleasure chemical or the happiness molecule. It gets credited with the feeling of reward, the sensation of satisfaction, the warmth that spreads through you when something goes right. But this description, while not entirely wrong, misses the most important thing. Neuroscientist Kent Berridge, over decades of meticulous research, drew a distinction that fundamentally reframes how we think about dopamine. He separated two things that had been conflated, wanting and liking. In a series of experiments that have become foundational in the field, Berridge was able to suppress dopamine systems in animals while leaving intact the systems involved in experiencing pleasure. The result was striking. Animals with suppressed dopamine still responded with obvious pleasure when food was placed in their mouths. Their expressions, their physiological responses, the systems Berridge identified as the liking circuitry, all of these remained active and responsive. But these animals would not seek food. They would not pursue it. They would not work toward it. They could like without wanting. The reverse is also true, and perhaps more familiar from human experience. You can want something intensely, persistently, almost compulsively, and then find that having it delivers much less than the wanting promised. Dopamine drives the pursuit. It does not guarantee the prize. Think about what this means for the texture of daily life. The craving for the next thing. The restlessness that arrives almost immediately after an achievement is secured. The way the goal that seems so important, so essential, can lose its luster the moment you hold it. The brain is not defective when this happens. The brain is operating exactly as designed. Because in the ancestral environment, the work was never done. The hunt had to continue. The search for resources, for safety, for connection, these were never finished. An animal that became fully satisfied and stopped seeking would quickly find itself outcompete by one that kept moving. So the brain developed a system that is, by design, always slightly ahead of where you are. Always pointing forward. Always suggesting that the next thing might be the one that finally satisfies. Feel this in your body for a moment. That lean forward. That low-grade pull towards something not yet obtained. It might feel like excitement. Or like restlessness. Or like a kind of low background hunger that is present even when you can't identify what it's hungry for. In your chest, perhaps, a slight tension, a readiness. In your attention. A tendency to move towards certain thoughts, certain possibilities, certain imaginings. This is dopamine in the body. The feeling of reaching before the hand has extended. But here is where the story becomes interesting rather than simply discouraging. Because while the dopamine system cannot be fully satisfied, it is also genuinely responsive to meaning. And this distinction, between dopamine activated by something meaningful and dopamine activated by something merely stimulating, may be one of the most practically important things neuroscience has offered us. The brain releases dopamine when you scroll through a feed of images designed to capture your attention. It also releases dopamine when you work steadily towards something you genuinely care about. When you push past a difficulty and feel yourself growing. When you move in the direction of a life that aligns with your deepest sense of what matters. The chemical is the same. But the trajectory of one of these leads somewhere, and the trajectory of the other circles back on itself. Researcher Teresa Amabile spent years studying what she called the progress principle. She found, across hundreds of workers in creative fields, that the single most powerful predictor of positive inner emotional life on any given day was not recognition, not salary, not even collegial relationships. It was simply the sense of making progress on meaningful work. A small step forward. A problem slightly more solved. A piece of something difficult coming a little more into clarity. The brain, the dopamine system specifically, responds powerfully to this feeling of forward movement. Not only to arrival. Not only to the triumphant completion. To the step itself. This is, perhaps, one of the most genuinely useful things to hold as you move through daily life. Not, when I finish this, I'll feel satisfied. Because the research suggests the satisfaction will be brief and the system will quickly point to the next horizon. But rather, is there something here, in this present movement, that I can allow myself to feel? The step I just took. The thing I just learned. The small evidence of movement in a direction that matters. Dopamine is already responding to this. Even now, in this moment of lying quietly and following a thread of thought, the brain is noting, this is something you chose. This is movement of a kind. This is the forward-leaning self, doing what it does. There's another dimension to dopamine that's worth sitting with, because it touches something true about the way we live now. The dopamine system is sensitive not just to rewards, but to unpredictable rewards. In the original research on reward and the brain, scientists discovered that neurons fired even more intensely when rewards were uncertain than when they were guaranteed. The possibility of reward is, in some ways, more potent than the certainty of it. This is why gambling is so compelling. Why certain patterns of social media use are hard to step away from. Why waiting for a message, not knowing if it will come, can be more activating than simply receiving news you already expect. The system was not designed for the environments where we now live. The unpredictable reward structures that our digital world offers are extraordinarily well matched to exactly this vulnerability. Understanding this doesn't make the pull disappear. But it changes your relationship to it. I see you, you can say to the restlessness. I understand what you are. Picture something for a moment, there in the quiet of your mind. A road stretching out into the distance. And on the horizon, a light. You walk toward it. As you walk, it brightens. The closer you seem to get, the more vividly it glows. But the horizon keeps pace with you. You never stand directly inside that light. It is always slightly ahead. Always the next step, the next effort, the next reaching. This is the nature of dopamine. Not a flaw in the design. Not a cruelty. It is the engine of a life in motion. Without it, the world would go still. Gray and quiet and without direction. With it, there is always something ahead. Always something worth the next step. But perhaps the most important revision we can make to how we understand this system is this. The journey is not something you endure on the way to the destination. The journey is where the living happens. The brain is most alive in the middle of things, in the middle of effort, of curiosity, of reaching toward. Arrival is the resting point before the next beginning. And in each of those middles, in the patient, uncertain, ongoing work of moving towards something that matters, there is a specific kind of joy available. Not the explosive joy of triumph. Something quieter. The satisfaction of effort made. Direction held. Presence given. Right now, in this quiet room, in this night. You chose to be here. Something in you leaned toward this. Wanted to follow a thread of curiosity into a place of rest and understanding. That wanting was not trivial. That is the same system that has driven every meaningful pursuit, every genuine reach toward growth, every patient movement toward something better. Dopamine brought you here. And in this moment, even in stillness, the brain is noting, this was worth the step. That small, quiet recognition is all it needed. You followed the path of desire this far. That forward lean of the brain, that restless, faithful reaching towards something just ahead. And now we come to something different. Not forward movement. Something more like release. The moments when the body decides that what it has been carrying needs to find a way out. Has this ever happened to you? You're listening to a piece of music, one you've heard 100 times, and without any warning your eyes fill with tears. Not from sadness, necessarily. Not from anything you could easily explain. Just, something in the music finds something in you, and your body responds before your mind has any idea what is happening. Or you're watching something unremarkable, a film you didn't expect much from, a scene that seems simple, and suddenly your throat tightens and the tears are already there. You catch yourself and think, why? Where did that come from? The answer is further down than you'd expect. Tears are, scientifically speaking, a remarkably complex substance. This is not a poetic observation. It is a biological one. The human body produces 3 distinct types of tears, and they are chemically different from one another in ways that are meaningful and revealing. The first type is basal tears, the thin, constant film that coats the surface of the eye, keeping it moist and protected. You are producing these right now, without knowing it. They do their quiet work continuously, without drama or notice. The second type is reflex tears, the ones produced in response to physical irritation. The eyes watering when you're near smoke. The tears from cutting onions, from a gust of cold wind, from something that has gotten into the eye. These are protective. They flush and clean. The third type, the one we most commonly mean when we talk about crying, is emotional tears. And this third type is chemically distinct from the other 2 in ways that point directly to what they're actually doing in the body. Biochemist William Fry, who spent considerable time researching emotional tears, identified something important about their composition. Emotional tears contain higher concentrations of stress hormones than reflex tears. They carry cortisol, a primary marker of physiological stress. They contain prolactin, a hormone associated with emotional sensitivity and the management of difficult states. And they carry leucine and kephalin, one of the body's naturally produced opioids, a genuine, endogenous pain reliever. When you cry emotional tears, your body is actively exporting chemicals that have accumulated during periods of stress and difficulty. Not metaphorically moving through something. Biochemically, measurably releasing it. This is why the experience of crying often carries, alongside whatever difficulty prompted it, a quality of relief. Not always. Not immediately. Sometimes crying leaves you feeling emptied in a way that has nothing soothing about it. But the research bears out what many people have observed in their own lives, that crying, particularly sustained crying, the kind where something real is being released, is often followed by a settling. A quieting. A sense that the internal pressure has decreased by some small but significant amount. The nervous system shifts. The parasympathetic branch, the one associated with rest, with digestion, with repair, with the signal that says the immediate crisis has passed, becomes more active. The body, having spoken, begins to rest. There is also an evolutionary question worth asking here, because it's a strange thing when you consider it: why would an animal cry? The act of crying is, in certain obvious ways, counterproductive. It makes sound. It draws attention. It blurs vision. It occupies facial muscles that could be doing other things. If you were being pursued by something dangerous, crying would be exactly the wrong physiological response. So why did the capacity for emotional crying develop at all? One of the most compelling theories comes from an evolutionary perspective on attachment and social bonding. Tears are visible. They can be seen from a distance. They communicate something unmistakable and specific: this individual is in distress. This individual is vulnerable. This individual needs something from the social world. And here's the remarkable thing: across cultures, across ages, across enormous variation in how emotional expression is understood and performed, the sight of tears in another person activates something recognizable and consistent in observers. An impulse to move closer. To make contact. To ask, what's wrong, or simply to be present. Tears call for connection. They are a signal, encoded into the body over millions of years of social evolution, that says, I need the group. I cannot carry this alone right now. Come toward me. And the group is wired to hear that signal. But what about crying alone? What about those quiet moments in the middle of the night when no one is there, when the tears come and there is no one to witness them or respond to them? Does the biological function still operate? The research suggests, yes, largely. Because the physiological effects of crying, the release of stress hormones, the activation of the parasympathetic nervous system, the shift in breathing patterns that accompany sustained crying, these happen in the body regardless of whether an audience is present. The body doesn't require a witness to do its work. It releases what needs releasing. It settles what can settle. Let an image come into your mind. Something you've been holding for a long time. It doesn't have to be enormous. The most persistent weights are sometimes very quiet ones. A worry that keeps returning. A grief that sits below the daily surface of things. A longing that has learned to stay quiet but never entirely disappears. Now imagine that something in you knows how to let a little of that out. Not all at once. Not in a dramatic collapse. Just a small release. A crack in a dam that allows the pressure to equalize a little. That's what emotional tears can do. They don't resolve the underlying thing. They don't take the difficulty away. But they allow the system to breathe. Different cultures have drawn very different conclusions about what tears mean. In some traditions, visible crying is closely associated with weakness, with an inability to manage one's own internal states, a failure of emotional discipline. This is particularly true in contexts where stoicism has been elevated to a cultural virtue, and where the display of vulnerability is read as the absence of strength. In other traditions, tears are treated as something sacred, as evidence that something genuinely important is being felt, as proof of depth, as a sign of authentic presence. And in some, crying is a communal act. A ritual. A thing that communities do together, not in private. In Japan, there is a practice that has grown in recent years called roikatsu, which translates roughly as tear-seeking. Groups gather specifically to watch emotionally affecting content together, to allow themselves to cry in community, to use the physiological release of tears as a form of deliberate emotional maintenance. The people who participate describe feeling lighter, cleaner, more connected, to themselves and to each other, afterward. Tears as hygiene. Tears as something the system needs periodically, the way the body needs water. There is something important to consider about what happens when we don't allow tears. Research in psychoneuroimmunology, the study of the relationship between psychological states and the body, has found consistent connections between the suppression of emotion and various markers of physiological stress. Suppression is not passive. It is active. When the body generates an emotional response and the mind overrides it, when the impulse arises and the instruction goes out to not feel it, not show it, not follow it to its natural expression, actual neural resources are recruited for that work. The prefrontal cortex engages. Effort is exerted. The body does something real and effortful, in the same way that holding a heavy object requires muscular engagement even if you're standing completely still. Over time, this ongoing effort accumulates. It shows up as a particular kind of fatigue, not the tiredness of physical exertion, but a deeper depletion. A flatness. A sense of being muted. An inability to feel clearly in either direction, not fully sad, not fully joyful, just muffled. The body is spending so much of its resources on holding things in that it has less available for everything else. None of this is an instruction to cry more. Or to force feeling. Or to pursue emotional expression as some kind of performance. The body knows when it's ready and when it isn't. But it might be worth questioning, gently, whether there are places in your life where the system has learned to override this signal very quickly. Whether there are things that get pushed back down so automatically, so reflexively, that you no longer notice the pushing. Not because there is anything wrong with you for having learned to do this, but because the tear ducts are always ready. They have never stopped being ready. They are patient, and without judgment, and they will be there when you are. Come to your body now. Feel the area around your eyes. The bridge of the nose. The throat. Let the jaw be easy, unclenched, unheld. Let the breath be natural. And whatever is present, whatever has been sitting close to the surface or sitting far from it, you don't have to do anything with it right now. Just let it be acknowledged. The body knows the way. It always has. Something has shifted. In these quiet passages, moving from one chamber of the emotional world to the next, something in the body has been releasing. The shoulders a little lower. The breath a little more freely given. Some small tension that had been held without even knowing it, now gone or going. And now we arrive at one of the most quietly astonishing conversations happening inside you at this very moment. Not between people. Not between mind and memory. Between the heart and the brain. When someone says, "I know it in my heart," we tend to hear this as poetry. A beautiful way of expressing conviction. A metaphor for deep feeling. The language of emotion reaching for something that ordinary description can't quite hold. But the science of the last few decades has revealed something extraordinary. The heart is not only a pump. The heart is an organ of perception. An organ of communication. An organ that is, in ways we are only beginning to fully understand, something like a second brain. Begin with what the heart actually contains. Inside the heart's own tissue, interwoven with the muscle and the connective structure, there is a complex and largely self-governing nervous system. More than 40,000 neurons. A neural network capable of independent processing, capable of learning, of memory, of making decisions without waiting for instructions from the brain above. Physiologist J. Andrew Armour, who mapped this system in the 1990s and coined the term, the heart-brain, described it as a sophisticated center that can act autonomously. The heart doesn't wait to be told what to do. It processes information from the body and the environment, and it responds. And it communicates upward. This is the part that most fundamentally changes how we think about the heart-brain relationship. When researchers measure the nerve traffic moving between the heart and the brain, what they find is that the vast majority of signals flow in one direction, from the heart upward toward the brain. The heart is not a passive recipient of the brain's instructions. The heart is a constant, active sender of information. Every beat carries data. Every shift in rhythm, every variation in the interval between contractions, every change in pressure or chemistry. All of this is transmitted upward, through the vagus nerve and other pathways, to the very centers of the brain that process emotion, govern decision-making, and shape conscious awareness. The heart speaks. And the brain listens. What difference does this actually make to emotional experience? This is where the research becomes deeply relevant to daily life. When the heart beats in what researchers call a coherent pattern, smooth, regular, rhythmic, like a gently rolling wave, the signals it sends to the brain are signals of stability, of safety, of the body being in a state of ease. The brain, receiving these signals, responds accordingly. Alpha brainwaves increase, the brain enters a state associated with alert relaxation, with creativity, with open and flexible thinking. The prefrontal cortex functions more effectively, the part of the brain responsible for nuanced judgment, for seeing multiple perspectives, for making decisions that account for complexity. The emotional processing centers are less reactive. The alarm system is quieter. When the heart is in a state of incoherence, when the rhythm is erratic, when the intervals between beats are jagged and irregular, the signals sent upward tell a different story. Stress. Turbulence. Something is wrong or uncertain. And the brain responds to this too. Amygdala activation increases. The thinking brain's capacity narrows. Emotions become less manageable. The heart, without uttering a single word, is shaping the quality of your inner experience. The HeartMath Institute has spent decades researching this phenomenon, and their findings have implications that extend far beyond laboratory settings. In studies across diverse populations, they found that the physiological state of the heart, whether it is in coherence or incoherence, predicts cognitive performance, emotional resilience, and even the quality of relationships. And perhaps most importantly, they found that this state can be intentionally influenced. The fastest, most reliable way to shift the heart toward coherence. Emotions of genuine care. Not performed gratitude. Not forced positivity. But real, felt appreciation, the kind that arises when you bring to mind something that genuinely matters to you. Someone you love. A moment of beauty you actually remember. A kindness that actually moved you. When these feelings are allowed to be felt, the heart rhythm smooths. The internal environment changes. And the brain, receiving new signals from below, shifts with it. Let something come into the quiet of your mind now. Something or someone that carries warmth for you. It doesn't have to be grand. In fact, the smaller and more specific it is, often the more powerful. A face. A memory of a particular afternoon. The way a certain place has always made you feel. Something from your past that still holds warmth after all the years that have passed since it happened. Let the feeling of that, whatever it is, be present for a moment. Feel it in the chest. That small opening, that slight softening. That is the heart shifting. And as it does, it is sending different signals upward. Now let's turn to the broader question this research points toward: what is intuition? Because the conversation between heart and brain is closely related to what humans have called, across centuries and cultures, the knowing that arrives before reasoning, the hunch, the gut sense, the quiet certainty that sometimes arrives when no logical process has yet worked things out. In English, we say, gut feeling. In Turkish and many other languages, the phrase involves the heart. In others, the body more generally. Across human experience, there has always been the sense that the body holds a form of knowledge that the analyzing mind hasn't yet accessed. And neuroscience is beginning to understand why. Antonio Damasio's somatic marker hypothesis offers a framework for this. Every decision we make, he argued, is accompanied by physical signals from the body, markers laid down by accumulated experience, by the emotional residue of every choice and outcome we have ever navigated. These markers arrive before conscious analysis does. Before you have reasoned through the pros and cons of a situation, before you have weighed the evidence, before you have consulted your principles, the body has already begun responding to the situation's resonance with your history. A tightening in the stomach. A relaxation in the chest. A subtle sense of expansion or contraction. These are not random. They are data. They are the body's rapid summary of everything you have learned and survived and understood at the level below conscious thought. The heart is deeply involved in generating these signals. Its constant upward communication means it is always contributing to the brain's construction of your inner state. When you walk into a room and something feels wrong before you can identify what, when you meet someone and something about them doesn't add up before you can say why. When a decision you're considering creates a sense of resistance you can't yet articulate, the heart has likely weighed in already. The brain is already building its assessment based partly on what the heart has sent. There's another dimension to the heart's reach worth considering. The electromagnetic field generated by the heart's activity, the field that is measurable through something called magnetocardiography, extends outside the body. It can be detected by instruments placed more than a meter away. And research from the HeartMath Institute suggests that this field can be detected not only by instruments, but by other people. When two people are in close proximity, their heart fields interact. In studies where participants were asked to focus on feelings of care toward a partner in the room, changes appeared in the partner's brain activity that appeared to mirror the heart signal. The emotional state of one person's heart, in other words, was influencing the nervous system of the person beside them. This is why certain people calm us simply by being near. Why entering some environments feels like immediate relief, and others like immediate tension. Why some relationships, before a word has been exchanged, already feel safe, and others, before anything has happened, already don't. The body is reading. Constantly. Before the mind has gotten involved. Come back to your breath for a moment. Let it move freely. In and out. Without holding anything. Feel the chest rise and fall. And somewhere in there, beneath the sternum, in that warm, enclosed, endlessly working space. The heart is continuing its conversation. Right now, in this quiet. Sending its signals upward. Shaping the quality of what you feel. And if you are still, and you allow it, you can almost sense it. Not as a sound. As a presence. A steady, faithful, quietly knowing pulse. That pulse is still there. That steady, faithful signal rising from the chest upward. And now, moving outward from it, following that field the heart generates beyond the edges of the body, we come to one of the most remarkable capacities the human brain has developed. The ability to feel what is happening inside someone else. Not to imagine it. Not to reason it out. To actually, in a measurable neurological sense, experience it. Think of a moment when someone you cared about was in pain. Maybe they were telling you something difficult. Maybe they were simply sitting across from you and something in their face told you, before they said a word, that they were carrying something heavy. And something happened inside you. Not a thought about their pain. The pain itself, or something like it, moving through you. A tightening in your own chest. A quality in your own throat. Something real, physical, happening in your own body in response to what was happening in theirs. You didn't decide to feel that. It arrived. How? The answer begins in a laboratory in Parma, Italy, in the early 1990s, with a discovery that was entirely accidental. A team of neuroscientists led by Giacomo Rizzolatti were studying motor neurons in the brains of macaque monkeys, the neurons responsible for controlling specific physical movements. They had attached electrodes that would register when particular neurons fired. The experiment was proceeding normally. And then one of the researchers, one account suggests it was a graduate student returning from lunch, picked up a peanut and brought it to his own mouth while in the presence of one of the monkeys. The monitoring equipment registered activity. In the monkey's brain. In the specific neurons associated with the act of reaching and grasping. The monkey had not moved. Had not reached. Had not done anything. It had simply watched. The team tested this observation rigorously, from every angle, with every variation they could imagine. Again and again, the result was the same. When the monkey observed a researcher performing an action, the neurons in the monkey's brain associated with that same action became active. Not identically to how they would fire if the monkey were performing the action itself, but clearly, measurably, specifically. The brain was simulating from the outside what it observed happening in another. Rizzolatti called these mirror neurons. And while the subsequent decades of research have brought important nuance and debate about exactly how the mirror neuron system works in humans, the core finding has held and expanded. The human brain contains circuits that respond to observed experience as though it were partially lived experience. This is the neurological basis of empathy. Not only a capacity for abstract understanding. Not only the ability to reason about another person's perspective. A direct, physical, internal echo. When you watch someone in pain, your brain's pain processing regions activate, partially, not fully, but measurably. The experience is not identical to your own pain. But the neural territory is familiar. The pathways being used overlap. When you watch someone feel fear, the amygdala that monitors your own fear responds. When you see someone laugh, genuinely, uncontrollably, something in your face, in your chest, begins to echo it. Mirror neurons are working in all of these moments. The boundary between self and other is not absolute in the brain. It has always been, in some sense, permeable. This makes evolutionary sense of a deep kind. Humans survive not as isolated individuals but as members of groups. And the group functions, coordinates, coheres, trusts, helps, only when its members can read each other. When they can understand, quickly and accurately, what is happening inside the person beside them. Language helps with this. But language came late in evolutionary terms, and it remains imprecise. The mirror system came earlier. It allowed the reading of emotional states across the gap between bodies, without words. An individual who could feel what their group members felt, who was moved when a companion was injured, afraid when a companion was frightened, alert when a companion tensed, was an individual who could respond appropriately. Who could be counted on. Who contributed to the group's ability to move through the world as something larger and more capable than a collection of separate selves. And then human beings developed something even more sophisticated. What developmental psychologists call theory of mind. The understanding, which children typically develop around the age of 4 to 5, that other people have inner experiences different from their own. That what is inside another person's mind is its own separate territory, with its own contents, its own perspective, its own knowledge and ignorance. This seems simple. Almost too obvious to require mention. But it is, among all the species we know, extraordinarily rare. And it extends the reach of empathy enormously. Because now you can not only feel the echo of another's pain in your own nervous system. You can wonder about it. You can imagine your way into it. You can ask what it's like to be that particular person, in that particular situation, carrying that particular history. This is the beginning of genuine understanding. Let your mind rest for a moment on someone in your life who is carrying something difficult right now. Not to dwell in their difficulty. Not to absorb it into yourself. Just to allow a brief, gentle awareness of it. There is a person. Real, living, with their own nervous system and their own history and their own interior world, who is navigating something that costs them something. And some part of you, without being asked, already knows something about what that costs. That knowledge is a gift you didn't have to learn. The mirror system gave it to you. But we should also speak honestly about something important. Because the capacity for empathy, as profound and necessary as it is, carries a cost that many people carry without recognizing it for what it is. Psychologists have identified and studied a phenomenon called empathy fatigue, or compassion fatigue. It is most commonly discussed in the context of people who work in helping professions, nurses, therapists, social workers, emergency responders, teachers in difficult settings, but it is not limited to them. Anyone who regularly and deeply attends to other people's emotional pain can find the mirror system gradually becoming a source of burden rather than connection. The process works something like this. When you feel someone's pain alongside them, something in you is genuinely activated. This requires resources. It takes something out of you. If this happens continuously, if you move from one person's pain to the next, or if you carry someone's suffering with you long after leaving their presence, the emotional system gradually becomes depleted. You begin to protect yourself, unconsciously, by reducing the resonance. By creating distance. By feeling less. Not because you are cold or indifferent. But because the system is depleted and protecting itself. This is not a failure of empathy. It is a predictable response to a genuine physiological limit. And recognizing it matters, because it points toward what's needed. Neuroscientist and contemplative researcher Tanya Singer, who has spent years studying the neural bases of empathy and compassion, found something important in her research. People trained in empathy-based practices, in actively feeling what another person feels, showed increased activation in pain-related regions over time, and also showed signs of burnout and emotional depletion. But people trained in compassion-based practices, which involve feeling warmth and care toward another person without necessarily merging with their pain, showed different neural patterns. More activity in reward and affiliation regions. Less exhaustion. Compassion is the bridge. Empathy says, I feel what you feel. I am in this with you. Compassion says, I care that you are feeling this. I am here, and I am not going anywhere. Empathy moves toward fusion. Compassion maintains connection while preserving the self. Both are essential. And the balance between them, how fully to enter another's experience, how much to stay rooted in one's own, is one of the most important ongoing negotiations of any life spent in genuine relationship. There is a phrase that appears, in various forms, across many different languages and traditions. I see you. Not, I understand your situation, or, I have analyzed your circumstances, or even, I know what you're going through. Just, I see you. You are not invisible to me. Your inner life is real to me. I am looking toward you rather than past you. This is what the mirror system, when it's operating with care and with enough resources to sustain it, makes possible. The gift of genuine recognition. The experience, which remains one of the most powerful things human beings can give each other, of being truly met. Right now, in this quietness, is there someone you're holding? Someone you've been thinking about without maybe fully acknowledging it? Just allow their presence here for a moment. Not to solve anything. Not to carry what is theirs to carry. Simply, they are real. Their experience is real. Something in you is aware of them. That awareness itself is a form of love. And love, as we'll discover, has chemistry of its own. Something has moved through this space. The careful, attending quality of empathy, that willingness to feel the reality of another person, is still present. And now something shifts direction. We've been looking at the emotions that protect, the ones that release, the ones that reach across the space between people. Now we come to the one that opens. The one that expands. The one that is, perhaps, the most surprising when examined closely. Joy. Not happiness. It's worth pausing on this distinction before we go any further, because conflating the two leads to a particular kind of confusion about what we can reasonably expect from our own emotional lives. Happiness, in the way psychologists and researchers tend to use the term, refers to a sustained state, a general orientation toward life that carries a sense of well-being, meaning, and satisfaction. It's something more like a background condition, a quality of the life being lived over time. Joy is different. Joy is sudden. Involuntary. Disproportionate. It arrives without announcement and often catches you off guard. It has a quality of aliveness to it that is more intense than ordinary contentment, a brightness, a fullness, a sense of something opening that was closed before. And perhaps most interestingly, it is often mixed with other things. With tenderness. With a quiet undercurrent of sadness at the very beauty of what is being experienced. With a kind of fragility, as though the brightness itself draws attention to how brief everything is. When neuroscientists observe the brain during experiences of joy, what they find is not a single, localized event. Joy doesn't live in one place. It moves through multiple regions simultaneously, the reward circuitry, where dopamine traces its familiar paths, the prefrontal cortex, where the meaning of the experience is constructed. The anterior cingulate, which integrates emotional information with thought, regions of the limbic system that tie the experience to memory and to relationship. And the body joins in. The breath changes. The face changes. Posture opens, the spine straightens slightly, the chest expands, the muscles around the eyes relax in a way that is different from all other expressions. The heart rate shifts. Joy isn't only felt. It is inhabited. Psychologist Barbara Fredrickson spent decades developing what she called the Broaden-and-Build theory of positive emotions, and her work has been one of the most influential in understanding what emotions like joy actually do, not just in the moment of feeling them, but in the longer arc of a life. Her central insight was this: positive and negative emotions don't serve the same function. Negative emotions, fear, anger, disgust, anxiety, were evolutionarily shaped to narrow our focus. To direct attention sharply and specifically toward a threat or problem. To constrain behavior around a particular challenge. This narrowing is exactly what is needed when a real threat is present. You don't want your attention wandering when you need to respond to danger. But positive emotions, and joy in particular, do something fundamentally different. They broaden. In the presence of joy, the field of attention expands. Novel connections become more visible. Peripheral possibilities that would be filtered out in a state of anxious focus suddenly become available. Creativity increases. Cognitive flexibility expands. The ability to see multiple perspectives, to hold complexity, to approach problems with genuine openness, all of these improve. Joy doesn't just feel good. It builds. It builds the cognitive, psychological, and social resources that make a life more capable, more resilient, and more richly connected. Watch a child in a state of pure play. Absorbed entirely. The question of whether what they're doing is useful or efficient or impressive to anyone else simply absent. There is a river in a cardboard box. There is a kingdom in a pile of cushions. There are entire civilizations being constructed and negotiated and defended and lost. In this state, the child is learning. Not because they've been instructed to. Not because they're working toward any outcome. Because joy orients the developing mind toward exploration and experimentation in a way that nothing else quite does. Joy is not the reward for learning. Joy is the environment in which learning happens most fully. And something of this deep relationship between joy and the expansion of what is possible, persists throughout life. There is something Brené Brown found in her research that strikes me as one of the most honest and useful truths about joy. She had expected, as she collected thousands of interviews about human joy, to find that the experiences people described in relation to joy were largely positive, uncomplicated, full of brightness without shadow. What she found was almost the opposite. Again and again, people described the experience of joy as one of the most vulnerable things they'd ever felt. Not despite the brightness of it, but because of it. The parents watching their sleeping child and feeling that ache of love and fear simultaneously. The person standing in a moment of real contentment, everything going well, people around them, life aligned with what matters, and finding themselves unable to fully inhabit it. A voice saying, "Something will go wrong. Don't let yourself have this completely." Brown named this pattern foreboding joy. The strategy, usually unconscious, of leaning away from moments of genuine happiness in anticipation of the loss that must surely follow. If I don't fully feel this, losing it won't hurt as much. This is a strategy the brain develops, often after loss. After being caught unprepared by how much something mattered when it was taken away. It is, in its way, an attempt at protection. But Brown's research found something important about what it costs. The people in her study who were most able to withstand genuine difficulty, who showed the most resilience in the face of loss and grief and hardship, were not those who had cultivated emotional distance. They were not those who had learned to feel less. They were those who had practiced gratitude. Who had developed the habit of paying attention to small joys. Who had learned, sometimes through deliberate effort, to say, "This is beautiful," when something was beautiful, without immediately moving to, "But it won't last." The armor we construct around joy to protect ourselves from loss doesn't actually protect us from the loss when it comes. But it does prevent us from fully living in the time before. Come to your body for a moment. Notice the weight of it. The warmth where it meets the surface beneath you. The rise and fall of the breath. And then, gently, without striving. Is there anything present right now that carries the quality of ease? Of okayness? Of something, even small, that is simply good? The temperature of the room. The fact of rest. The quiet. The brain is built to notice possibility and threat, this we have explored. The negativity bias tilts perception strongly toward what is difficult, what could go wrong, what requires attention. But the capacity to perceive what is good is also present. Always present. It just requires, sometimes, a deliberate movement of attention. Research has examined what happens in the brain when people practice what's called savoring, the intentional extension of positive experience, the choice to stay with something pleasant rather than moving immediately past it. When people savor, the neural signatures of positive experience are sustained longer. The emotional benefit extends. Not through forcing or manufacturing feeling. Through slowing down long enough to let what is genuinely there be genuinely felt. This is available in the smallest things. The quality of light in a room. A memory that holds warmth. The sensation of lying still and breathing easily. There is a Japanese aesthetic concept worth resting with for a moment, mono no aware. It translates roughly as, the pathos of things, but that translation misses something essential. It is the feeling that arises when you are fully present to something beautiful, and you are also aware, simultaneously, that it is passing. That it won't last. That this exact quality of this exact moment is already moving away from you. Cherry blossoms are the classic example. They are breathtaking in their bloom precisely because the bloom is brief. The awareness of the falling makes the presence more vivid. This is not a sad philosophy. It is an invitation to presence. The moment matters because it passes. The joy is available because you are here for it. Tonight, in this quiet, this matters. You are alive. You are breathing. Something brought you here, some form of curiosity, some reaching toward something. That reaching is itself a form of joy. Small, perhaps. Quiet. Without fanfare. But real. And the brain, which so reliably notices what is hard and what is missing and what might go wrong, is also capable, when given permission, of noticing this. You paused in the space of joy. Allowed it to be what it is, brief, beautiful, mixed with other things. And now, without moving away too quickly, we turn towards something that often sits alongside joy in the emotional landscape. Something that is its neighbor in the sense that both arise when something matters. When something is at stake. Anger. Take a moment with just that word. Notice what happens when it lands. For some people, a slight contraction. A pulling back. An association with loss of control, with shame, with something that shouldn't be shown too easily or admitted to too readily. For others, a sense of recognition. A feeling of, yes, I know this one well. Perhaps a complicated relationship with it, the ways it has served them, the ways it has cost them. For others still, something that seems distant, belonging to other people, not to someone who has learned to be careful and contained. Whatever arises, it's worth attending to. Because anger may be one of the most consistently misunderstood signals in the emotional vocabulary. Let's begin with what anger actually is at the level of the brain and body. Like all of the emotions we've been exploring, anger begins with the amygdala's rapid threat assessment. But the threat that triggers anger is not always physical danger. It is, perhaps more commonly, the perception that something important has been violated. A boundary. An expectation. A value that you hold about how things should be. This is wrong, is a form of moral clarity. It requires that something matter to you. It requires values, standards, a sense of how things ought to be. It requires caring, deeply, about something. A person who feels no anger is not at peace. A person who feels no anger may simply have stopped caring. Anger, properly understood, is not the absence of goodness. It is the evidence of it. It is what arises when something you believe in is threatened or diminished. Researcher Jennifer Lerner's extensive work on anger has produced findings that are counterintuitive and important. Among the family of negative emotions, anger stands apart in a particular way. Most negative emotions come with a strong sense of uncertainty and loss of control. Fear, sadness, anxiety. These emotions tell the nervous system, something is wrong and I don't know what to do. The body enters a state of vigilant helplessness. Anger is different. Anger comes with a sense of agency. A sense that action is possible. That something can be done. That the world can be changed or confronted or resisted. In Lerner's research, people experiencing anger made more optimistic assessments of their situations than people experiencing fear, even when the objective circumstances were identical. Anger says, I am not helpless. There is something I can do here. This is why, under conditions of genuine threat or injustice, anger can be mobilizing in ways that more passive or frightened states are not. It is why throughout history, anger has powered social movements. Why it has given people the energy to confront what fear alone would have caused them to endure silently. But there is a layer beneath this that we need to go to. Because most of the anger encountered in daily life, the anger that arrives in relationships, in small frustrations, in the accumulated weight of small disappointments, carries a secondary quality. Anger, in these cases, is real. But it is not the original feeling. It is the feeling that has formed over the original feeling. Psychologists often describe anger as a secondary emotion, by which they mean, something else was present first. Something more vulnerable. Something more frightening to acknowledge or expose. Hurt. Disappointment. Fear. Grief. Loneliness. The feeling of being unseen or unimportant or not cared for in the way that was needed. These feelings are tender. They require exposure. To name them is to show where you are soft, where the world can get in. And so, very often, they become anger instead. Anger is more powerful feeling than hurt. It moves toward the world rather than turning inward. It has an outward direction rather than a vulnerable opening. Anger as armor. Anger as the guardian of softer things. There is a well-known exercise in therapeutic settings where people in the middle of anger are gently, carefully invited to ask a simple question. What is under this? Not, is my anger justified, or, should I feel this? Those questions often create defensiveness. Simply, if I remove this anger, just for a moment, what am I aware of underneath it? The answers, when people allow themselves to look, are often surprisingly tender. I was afraid he didn't care about me. I felt like she was saying I wasn't important. I thought this finally meant things would change, and then they didn't, and I don't know what to do with that. The anger was real. The anger was not manufactured. But it was protecting something even more real. Now consider what this means for what we do with anger. Research is consistent on two approaches that don't work. The first is suppression. Pushing anger down. Covering it with politeness or composure or the story that you're not really that angry, that it's fine, that it doesn't matter that much. Suppressed anger does not go away. It accumulates. It lodges in the body, in muscle tension, in elevated baseline cortisol, in a sustained physiological state of stress that the system was never designed to maintain indefinitely. And it tends, eventually, to come out anyway. Often in ways and at times that feel disproportionate to whatever triggered the release. The second is what researchers call venting, the idea that expressing anger directly, fully, without inhibition, will drain it away. The catharsis model. The hydraulic view of emotion. But studies consistently show that this doesn't work either. Expressing anger without processing it typically amplifies rather than reduces it. It rehearses and strengthens the neural pathways involved. It keeps the amygdala activated. Pouring fuel onto a fire does not put it out. What actually helps? Something more nuanced. More patient. Acknowledgement without performance. Recognizing that the anger is real and present and deserves attention, without amplifying it through expression or suppressing it through denial. Movement toward the layer beneath, that tenderness, that hurt, that fear or grief or disappointment that the anger is protecting. And, where possible, time. Not avoidance. Not pretending the anger wasn't there. But allowing the cortex to engage. Allowing the longer, slower, more nuanced parts of the brain to enter the conversation that the amygdala initiated so quickly and so loudly. Come to your body now. Think, very gently, of something that makes you angry. Something real. Something that genuinely costs you something. Don't dive deeply into it. Just allow it to be present at the edge of awareness. And then feel where it lives. The chest, likely. The jaw. The hands. The shoulders. A sense of heat or pressure or tightness somewhere in the body. Now let the question settle very gently. What is underneath this? Not an answer you have to produce. Just a willingness to look in the direction of the question. What matters so much here that its violation brings you here, to this place in the body? What are you protecting? Because here is what I want you to understand about anger. Anger is not evidence that something is wrong with you. Anger is evidence that something is wrong with the situation. And beneath that, it is evidence that you have values. You have a sense of what matters. You have things you care about enough to protect. The light beneath the anger, and it is always there, if you look, is the shape of what you love. You looked beneath the anger. And something was there. Something tender and real, something that the anger had been standing guard over, keeping hidden even from yourself perhaps. And now, carrying that awareness, we move into territory that is intimately connected to everything we've explored. Because the feelings we've been tracing, fear, desire, grief, joy, anger, connection, don't simply pass through us and disappear. They leave marks. They shape the very structure of memory. And memory, in turn, shapes what we feel, sometimes in ways we recognize, often in ways we don't. Consider the question, which experiences do you actually remember? Not in the sense of being able to reconstruct a timeline of your life, but in the sense of experiences that remain vivid, that you can still feel something when you return to them, that retain some quality of presence even years or decades after they occurred. The first time you realized you were genuinely loved. Or genuinely afraid. The moment a relationship changed irrevocably. A conversation that said something true to you and landed deeply. A loss that reoriented everything around it. A moment of unexpected beauty that stopped time. These are the ones that stay. And the ones that fade, the ordinary Tuesdays, the unremarkable afternoons, the meals eaten while thinking about something else, fade precisely because they were, in the relevant sense, emotionally neutral. This is not coincidence. This is design. The relationship between emotion and memory is not metaphorical. It is structural, biological, built into the architecture of how the brain stores and retrieves experience. The amygdala and the hippocampus are anatomically adjacent, close enough that their communication is constant and immediate. The hippocampus is the brain's primary memory consolidation center. It takes experience and begins the long process of encoding it into long-term storage, weaving it into the larger fabric of what you know and remember. The amygdala, as we've explored, is the threat detection and emotional significance assessor. And when an experience triggers strong amygdala activation, when it is accompanied by significant fear, grief, joy, or any other intense emotional charge, the amygdala sends a direct signal to the hippocampus. The signal essentially says, "This one matters. Encode it deeply. Hold it clearly. Don't let this one fade." The result is what researchers call emotional memory enhancement. The brain, receiving the amygdala's flag that something significant has occurred, deploys additional resources to consolidate the memory. More neurotransmitters. Stronger synaptic connections. More extensive neural networks recruited into the storage of this particular experience. The memory becomes more stable, more detailed, more easily retrieved. It stays. The evolutionary logic is clear. Remembering where the water source was served survival. But not urgently, and not at the expense of other things. Remembering where the predator attacked, the specific terrain, the time of day, the warning signs that preceded the encounter, was potentially the difference between future survival and future death. The system prioritized the emotionally significant. It tagged those experiences with chemical markers that said, "This is worth the energy of long-term storage. Carry this forward." And we do carry it forward. All of it. But here is where the design, so elegant in the context of our evolutionary past, creates complexity in the lives we're actually living. The brain does not encode positive and negative experiences with equal weight. This is what researchers have termed negativity bias, and it is one of the most pervasive and consequential features of how human cognition works. Negative events, threatening experiences, painful memories are encoded more quickly, more thoroughly, and with greater durability than positive ones. A single sharply critical comment can remain vivid for years while many compliments fade. A frightening experience from childhood can shape neural responses into adulthood while countless safe and warm experiences disappear. The threat is remembered. The ordinary goodness is largely forgotten. This asymmetry makes perfect sense from the perspective of survival. Forgetting a pleasant afternoon costs nothing important. Forgetting the circumstances of a dangerous encounter could cost everything. But living inside this asymmetry, in a world where most of us face psychological rather than physical threats, creates a distorted inner landscape. One where the difficult and the painful seem more real, more present, more defining than they may actually be. One where the genuine abundance of small good things is largely invisible against the vividness of what has hurt. Let the image come again of that archive room. All those boxes. All those labeled containers of experience. Some of them bright, immediately available, easy to open, the ones that were tagged by the amygdala as significant. And some of them small, faded, nearly forgotten. Ordinary afternoons, quiet conversations, the accumulation of small kindnesses and modest pleasures that constituted much of a life. It is worth pausing here to acknowledge, those small boxes exist too. They are less easily accessed. The system didn't flag them for priority storage. But they are there. And what they contain, what ordinary, unremarkable, safe and warm life actually looks like in its accumulated substance, is real. Now here is something that changes how we might relate to our own histories. Memory is not static. This is one of the most important, and initially counterintuitive, findings in the neuroscience of memory over the past few decades. Every time you remember something, the memory is in some sense reconstructed. Not played back, like a recording. Built again, from stored components, in a process that is active and influenced by the current state of the remembering mind. And during that reconstruction, the memory is briefly in what researchers call a labile state. It is temporarily unstable. Open to modification. When it is reconsolidated, when it returns to storage, it carries the influence of the context in which it was recalled. What this means, practically, is profound. Memories are not fixed. The past is not a locked room. Every time you return to a memory, you have the opportunity, not to change what happened, nothing can do that. But to change the context in which it is held. The emotional meaning carried by it. The way it connects to your present sense of yourself. This is one of the mechanisms through which therapeutic work can shift the weight of old experiences. Not by erasing them. Not by convincing yourself they didn't happen or didn't matter. But by returning to them in a different state, more resourced, more safe, more able to see them from a wider angle. And allowing the reconsolidation process to carry that new context into the stored version. The same events, held differently. There is also something worth sitting with in what this reveals about how we understand ourselves through time. You are not simply the sum of what has happened to you. You are the sum of how those experiences have been remembered, reconsolidated, interpreted, and made meaningful. And that process, the meaning-making, the narrative construction, is ongoing. It never stops. Every night that you sleep, the sleeping brain is engaged in consolidation work, reviewing the day's experiences, linking them to existing networks, deciding what to strengthen and what to allow to fade. Every time you return to the past, you are participating, whether you know it or not, in reshaping it. Come to your body for a moment. Is there something from the past that comes with you into this present moment? Something carried. Something that shaped who you are in ways that are still operating. You don't need to surface it fully right now. Don't need to examine it in detail or resolve anything. Just acknowledge, it's there. It has traveled with you. And it is held in a brain that is alive, changeable, capable of reintegration. Whatever has been stored can be revisited. Whatever has been understood in one way can, slowly and carefully, be understood differently. The weight of the past is real. And the past is not permanent. Both things are true. And sitting with both, without resolving the tension between them, is perhaps one of the most honest and courageous things a person can do. The archive is still there. All that stored experience. All those years of living and feeling and remembering. And somewhere in that archive, for most people, there are memories that share a particular quality. Moments of genuine connection. Of being truly present with another person, and truly met. And somewhere alongside them, because this is the nature of a life fully lived, memories of the absence of that. Of reaching and not finding. Of being present and not being seen. We've arrived at something that lives very close to the center of human experience. Something that science has only recently begun to understand as the fundamental biological signal it actually is. Loneliness. Not solitude. This distinction matters deeply, because solitude and loneliness look similar from the outside but feel entirely different from the inside, and arise from completely different conditions. Solitude is chosen. It carries the quality of rest, of recovery, of being with oneself in a way that replenishes rather than depletes. Many people find that they need solitude, genuinely need it, in order to feel themselves again after too much time spent in contact with others. Loneliness is different. It is not chosen. It is the painful awareness of a gap between the connection that is present and the connection that is needed. You can be entirely alone and not lonely. You can be surrounded by people and profoundly, devastatingly lonely. What determines which is not the number of people near you. It is the quality of contact. The sense of being truly known and truly present to someone who is truly present to you. John Cacioppo spent more than 2 decades studying loneliness, and the work he produced over that period fundamentally changed how we understand what loneliness is and what it costs. Before his research, loneliness was largely treated as a psychological condition, an emotional discomfort arising from unfulfilling social circumstances, something to address through better social skills or more social exposure. Cacioppo and his colleagues found something more fundamental. Loneliness is a biological signal. In the same way that hunger is not merely a desire for food but a physiological alert that the body requires fuel, and thirst is not merely a preference for liquid but a systemic warning that hydration is urgently needed, loneliness is the body's way of signaling that a fundamental biological need is going unmet. The need for social connection. The argument Cacioppo made, and it has been borne out in considerable subsequent research, is that social bonds are not optional enhancements to human life. They are not preferences or enrichments. They are requirements, in the same category as nutrition and sleep and physical safety. The human infant is the most helpless creature on earth at birth. More helpless than any other mammal. Unable to regulate its own temperature. Unable to feed itself. Unable to move through the world. Without consistent, reliable, caring social connection, a human infant dies. This is not a metaphor. This is the biological reality that shaped the evolutionary pressure for social bonding over millions of years. The brain developed an alarm system for social disconnection for the same reason it developed an alarm system for physical danger. Being alone, truly, persistently alone, was lethal. Connection equals safety, is one of the oldest equations written into the nervous system. And loneliness equals danger, is its inevitable corollary. What Cacioppo found when he studied the physiological effects of chronic loneliness was striking and, when considered, deeply sobering. Lonely people show elevated levels of cortisol, the primary stress hormone, across multiple measurements and time periods. Their immune systems are measurably suppressed. Inflammatory markers are elevated. The risk of illness increases. Sleep quality deteriorates, even when the quantity of sleep is maintained. The brain, on alert for social threat, is less able to reach the deep, restorative stages. The risk of cardiovascular disease increases. Cognitive decline in later life accelerates. Mortality risk rises. In one frequently cited analysis, chronic loneliness was found to be associated with a reduction in lifespan comparable to smoking 15 cigarettes per day. This is not hyperbole. This is the body's response to the sustained activation of an alarm that was never designed to run continuously. And here we arrive at the peculiarity of the present moment. Because by almost any quantitative measure, people today are more connected than at any previous point in human history. More communication tools. More channels. More access to more people. And by almost every measure of reported subjective experience, by what people say when they are asked honestly and privately, loneliness has been increasing for decades. Research from multiple countries over multiple decades shows rising rates of reported social isolation. The proportion of people who say they have no close confidant, no one with whom they can discuss what truly matters to them, has increased significantly. The resolution to this paradox, which Cassioppo was among the first to articulate clearly, lies in the distinction between contact and connection. The brain's social system was shaped by the kind of contact that characterized ancestral human life: sustained proximity, shared experience, genuine mutual vulnerability, reciprocal care, the slow accumulation of trust. The kind of contact available through screens and platforms is contact of a different quality. Broader, faster, more numerous, but often thinner. Less able to generate the deep sense of being truly known that the nervous system is actually monitoring for. It's possible to be in contact with hundreds of people and still have the alarm sounding. What quiets the alarm? Not, the research suggests, simply more social contact. What quiets it is quality of connection. The specific experience, irreplaceable and not substitutable, of being genuinely seen. Not of being liked, or followed, or praised, or acknowledged. Seen. Of having someone look at you and understand something true about your interior life, and remain present with that understanding. Of mattering, specifically, to someone specific. There is something else Cassioppo found that is worth holding, because it runs against what might feel instinctive. In lonely states, the brain tends to turn inward. To become more self-focused, more preoccupied with the self's own pain and insufficiency. And Cassioppo's research found that one of the most reliable pathways out of loneliness was, counterintuitively, the redirection of attention toward others. Not the pursuit of connection for its own sake, in an effortful, grasping way. But genuine curiosity about another person. Genuine care about what they were experiencing. The simple act of attending to someone else rather than monitoring one's own lack. This activation of the care and affiliation systems seemed to quiet the loneliness alarm in ways that simply seeking company did not. Connection, in other words, flows from the movement toward others. Not from waiting for others to move toward us. Come to your body now. Let the breath be easy. Feel the weight of where you are, the temperature around you, the particular quality of this quiet. And notice, in this moment, you are not alone. Not only in the large sense, that others exist, that the world is populated with people navigating their own darkness and beauty. But in this specific sense, someone chose these words. Someone spent time considering how to reach across whatever space lies between two nervous systems and offer something true. And you are here, attending. That is a form of contact. Quiet, unusual, conducted across a strange kind of distance. But real. You're not alone. That realization, settling in like something that was always true but needed saying. And now, from that ground, we come to the territory that all of this has been moving toward. The emotion that most fully encompasses what we've been exploring. The one that involves fear and desire, empathy and joy, memory and loneliness, all at once. The one that has generated more art, more confusion, more longing, more loss, and more transformation than anything else in the human catalog of experience. Love. The word is almost impossibly overloaded. Consider how many different things it's asked to carry. The love between a parent and a child, that overwhelming, sometimes frightening force that arrives with a newborn and never leaves, that changes the architecture of a self completely. The love between intimate partners, which carries desire, choice, history, the particular intimacy of being known across time in the privacy of an ongoing life. The love between friends, which has its own fierce loyalty, its own kind of choosing, its own grief when it's lost. The love for a place, a piece of music, a way of being in the world. And then, the hardest and the most foundational of all, the love available to oneself. All of this in one word. Begin with the chemistry, because it reveals something important about what love actually is and how it changes across time. Oxytocin is often called the bonding hormone, sometimes the cuddle hormone, and the name captures something real but also flattens what is a much more complex and interesting story. Oxytocin is released during physical contact, touch, warmth, closeness. It's released during birth, during nursing, in the sustained physical proximity of parent and infant. It rises during eye contact between people who trust each other, during genuine laughter, during the experience of being truly heard. And when it is present in the body, it performs something remarkable. It shifts the brain's social categorization. The person in whose presence oxytocin is released moves, neurologically, from the category of other to the category of us. This is my person. This is someone I am bound to. This is not a stranger but a member of my circle, someone whose well-being is relevant to my own. But love is more than oxytocin. It is more than any single molecule or mechanism. This matters, because reductive accounts of love, the "it's just chemicals" narrative, often miss the thing that makes love both scientifically interesting and humanly significant. The chemistry is real. And the chemistry doesn't explain the meaning. Knowing that when you look at someone you love, your brain releases oxytocin, and your dopamine system activates, and your heart coherence shifts, knowing all of this doesn't diminish what that experience is. It adds a dimension to it. It reveals that what you feel when you love has been built into the biology of your species over millions of years. That it is ancient. That it is not accidental. That it is the body doing exactly what the body was shaped to do. Reaching toward what allows life to continue and flourish. Psychologist Robert Sternberg proposed what he called the triangular theory of love, and it remains one of the most useful frameworks for understanding the complex and changing nature of love relationships. He identified 3 core components. The first is passion, the intense pull toward another person, the desire for closeness and contact, the urgency that marks early love. The second is intimacy. The quality of genuine closeness, of knowing and being known, of the accumulated trust and vulnerability and shared history that develops over time. The third is commitment, the decision, made consciously or gradually, to continue. To choose this person. To show up in the day-to-day reality of an ongoing life together. Different kinds of love contain these 3 elements in different proportions. And the proportions within any given relationship shift over time. The neuroscience of early romantic love is dramatic. Brain imaging studies of people who describe themselves as newly and intensely in love show patterns of activation that have been compared, with some justification, to addiction. The ventral tegmental area, a core component of the dopamine reward system, is highly active. The caudate nucleus lights up, associated with goal-directed pursuit. Cortisol is elevated, producing a kind of alert excitation. In some studies, serotonin levels appear to drop, which may contribute to the preoccupation, the inability to think about much else, that characterizes early infatuation. The brain in early love is a brain consumed, oriented entirely toward one thing. And then, typically, this intensity changes. Not always suddenly. Often gradually. The storms quiet. The obsessive quality softens. Something more habitual, more sustainable, settles in its place. And many people experience this shift as loss. As evidence that love has diminished. That the feeling has faded. That what they have is a lesser version of what they had. The neuroscience tells a different story. What changes is not the presence or depth of love. What changes is its neurological character. As a bond deepens across time, the brain's way of supporting it shifts. Dopamine's urgent, seeking quality becomes less dominant. Oxytocin, which is associated with the deep ease of established trust. With the comfort of familiar presence, with the safety of being known, becomes more prominent. This is not the consolation prize. This is not love's diminishment. This is love's maturation. The particular sweetness of long familiarity, of knowing how someone moves through space, of understanding what they mean when they say something a particular way, of a shared history that neither of you could reconstruct alone, this is oxytocin's gift. Let a quiet image come. Someone you love. Not in a dramatic moment. Not in the intensity of early feeling or the vividness of a significant event. Just an ordinary moment. Sitting in the same room. Moving through the same day. The specific quality of how it feels to be near them. The ease of it, if there is ease. The way your nervous system, in their presence, knows something it doesn't know elsewhere. This ordinary, unremarkable, profound ease, is love as a sustained state. As something that has become woven into how you are. There is also the question of love for oneself, which is perhaps the most written about and least understood aspect of the subject. The phrase, love yourself, has become so commonplace as to have lost much of its meaning. And the versions of self-love most commonly promoted, often involving aesthetics, achievement, self-assertion, tend to miss what the psychological research actually points toward. What the research finds is that the specific quality of inner orientation most associated with well-being, resilience, and the ability to sustain genuine connection with others is something called self-compassion. Self-compassion is not self-esteem, it is not the high evaluation of oneself, the maintenance of a positive self-image. It is, simply, treating oneself with the same quality of care and attention you would naturally extend to someone you love who was struggling. Acknowledging pain rather than dismissing it. Being a gentle and understanding inner presence rather than a relentlessly critical one. Recognizing that difficulty and imperfection are part of shared human experience rather than evidence of personal failure. Neuroscientist Kristin Neff, who has done extensive research on self-compassion, finds that it is associated with reduced anxiety and depression, greater emotional resilience, and, interestingly, greater capacity for genuine connection with others. Not less connection, as some people fear. More. Because the person who is not at war with themselves has more available for the people around them. The inner critic that expends enormous energy on self-judgment, that is constantly monitoring for inadequacy and finding it, is using resources that could be going toward presence, toward curiosity, toward the quality of attention that makes real connection possible. Place your hand on your chest, if you're comfortable doing so. Or simply direct your awareness there. Feel what is beneath it. Something working, steady and faithful, in the dark interior of the body. The heart that has been sending its signals upward throughout this entire journey. The heart that has, in its way, been present for every emotion we've explored. For every fear, every desire, every grief, every small joy, every moment of connection. Love, at its simplest, is the experience of finding another being's existence to be important. Not for what they provide. Not for what they reflect back to you. For what they simply, irreducibly are. And learning to extend this experience to oneself, to find your own existence important, in the same unconditional way, may be the longest work many of us will ever do. Worth beginning tonight. Worth beginning now. You've traveled a long way through the night. When we began, You were sitting at the edge of a river you'd always known was there, but had perhaps never stopped to observe so carefully. And since then, through the watcher in the dark, through the quiet promise of desire, through the chemistry of release, through the conversation between heart and brain, through the remarkable bridge of empathy, through the surprising fragility of joy, through the light hidden beneath anger, through memory's deep weaving, through the body's ancient signal for connection, through the many-layered elements of love. You've been following that river, watching where it goes, learning something about how it flows, and why. And now we've arrived at the place where the river seems to open, where the tributaries have met and the water moves more broadly. This isn't an ending. It is an arrival. There is a philosophical statement, nearly 4 centuries old, that has shaped the Western understanding of what it means to be a person. Descartes, in the midst of a systematic attempt to doubt everything that could be doubted, arrived at one thing he could not doubt: the doubting itself. Cogito ergo sum, he wrote. I think, therefore I am. Thought as the ground of existence. The mind as the seat of the self. This statement became a cornerstone of how modern consciousness has understood itself. But neuroscience, and perhaps more importantly, the careful observation of lived experience, suggests that something was placed before its time. Because thinking doesn't come first. Feeling does. Before the articulation, before the analysis, before the considered opinion, the body responds. The amygdala fires. The nervous system shifts. The heart sends its signals upward. We have explored this at every stage of this journey. The fear that precedes understanding. The desire that precedes the name of what is wanted. The empathic resonance that happens before deliberate perspective taking. The intuitive signal from the heart that arrives before conscious reasoning has assembled the evidence. Feeling is the ground on which thought stands. Not a disruption to thinking. Not a distortion of it. The thing that makes thinking possible at all. Antonio Damasio, who showed us the patients who could reason without feeling and therefore could not decide, not even the smallest of things, was pointing at this. Without the emotional signal, nothing has weight. Without weight, nothing can be chosen. Without choice, there is no life as a person. To feel is not merely to have experiences. To feel is to be here. Look back through everything this journey has held. Fear told you where the dangers were. It protected you, imperfectly and with extraordinary devotion, every moment of every year you've been alive. Sometimes it fired when it wasn't needed. Always it was trying to keep you here. Desire pointed you forward. It kept you moving through a world that didn't always move toward you. It held a light out ahead and walked beside you as you walked toward it, never quite letting you stop, never quite letting you say I've arrived, it's finished. Because it wasn't, and you weren't, and that is the nature of a life in motion. Tears carried out of the body the chemical residue of stress and grief. They called others toward you. They performed their quiet biochemical work whether or not anyone was watching. The heart spoke upward. It sent its steady signals into the brain that processes emotion and makes meaning. It contributed to every moment of intuition, every felt sense of rightness or wrongness that saved you from mistakes or pointed you toward things that mattered. Empathy opened the border between you and another person. The mirror system allowed you to feel, in some real neurological sense, what another felt. Made compassion possible. Made genuine care possible. Made it possible to not be alone, even when alone. Joy expanded you. Widened the aperture. Showed you, again and again, that the brain is capable of brightness, is built for it, in fact, and that the capacity for it lives closer to the surface than the negativity bias would suggest, if you're willing to slow down enough to let it be felt. Anger showed you where your values live. Where the line is. What matters enough to you that its violation calls something in you to stand up and say, no. Not this. This is not acceptable. That anger was the shape of what you believe in. Memory wove the emotional past into the fabric of the present, carrying forward the urgency of what has hurt and the warmth of what has held you, in proportions that sometimes felt unfair. But the past, we discovered, is not fixed. It is alive. It continues to be shaped by how it is remembered. Loneliness named a need that the body was already carrying, the ancient, biological requirement for genuine connection. Not contact. Connection. The specific, irreplaceable experience of being truly known by someone who is truly present. And love reached into all of it. Used every one of these systems. Brought them into relationship with each other. Made the whole elaborate, beautiful, painful architecture of the emotional self into something directed outward, toward another, and in doing so, into something that sustains life. Let the river come back to mind one more time. The same river from the very beginning of this journey. But you're standing beside it differently now. Not trying to stop it. Not afraid of where it's going. Not wishing it were narrower or calmer or more predictable. Just watching it. With the particular quality of attention that comes from understanding something you didn't understand before. This river doesn't threaten you. It is you. The whole of it. The fast and the slow, the clear and the murky, the tributaries of fear and desire and grief and joy all flowing together into this one moving thing. This is the interior life of a human being. This is what it looks like from the inside. I want to say something plainly now. Whatever you've been carrying tonight, whatever weight came with you into this quiet space, whatever the day held before you arrived here, none of it means something is wrong with you. The fear you felt. The watcher doing its ancient work. The longing that doesn't resolve, the dopamine system, faithful and restless, pointing forward. The grief that stays, memory doing what it was shaped to do, holding what mattered with the grip it was designed to maintain. The anger, the guardian of what you believe in, standing over what deserves to be protected. The loneliness, the body's honest signal that it needs what it was built to need. These are not evidence of failure. They are evidence of the system working. Imperfectly, sometimes. Mistakenly, sometimes. But always, always, in the direction of your continuation. There is one last thing the neuroscience offers that feels important to carry forward from this journey. The brain is not fixed. This is perhaps the most transformative scientific discovery of the past several decades, the understanding that the brain remains plastic throughout life. That neural pathways can be strengthened and weakened. That new connections can form. That patterns laid down in one context can be gently, gradually altered through new experience. The emotional patterns you carry, the specific ways your nervous system has learned to respond to threat, to loss, to connection, to uncertainty, these are not permanent features. They are the accumulated learning of a life. And learning, by definition, can continue. Bring your awareness to your body one last time. From the top of the head, slowly down. The face. The jaw, let it soften. The throat. The shoulders. The chest and the quiet industry of the heart within it. The stomach, the belly, the hips. The legs, extending outward. The hands, resting wherever they are. All of this, present. All of this, yours. All of this carrying you through a world that demands, the full equipment of an emotional life to navigate honestly. Take a breath in and slowly out. Let the exhale be longer than the inhale. Let the nervous system receive the signal that this is a safe moment. A moment of rest. A moment where the watching can ease. You arrived at this river a long time ago. You've been living beside it your whole life. And perhaps, tonight, you know it a little better. Perhaps you can look at it, at the fear and the desire, the grief and the joy, the anger and the love, with a little more of the recognition that comes from understanding. Not perfect. Not resolved. Not without the weight of what has been hard. But seen. To feel is to exist. Not as a philosophical proposition. As a lived truth, written in the body, confirmed by every breath, present in every signal that travels through the nervous system of a human being moving through the world. You feel. Therefore you are. And that is enough. More than enough. Let the body take over now. Let the eyelids do what they've been waiting to do. Let the breath find its own rhythm, slower, deeper, carrying less. Let the muscles release into whatever is holding you. The river is still moving. It will move through the night, carrying its freight of memory and hope and ordinary feeling through the dark hours toward morning. You don't have to guide it tonight. You can simply rest in it. Let it carry you. Good night, wanderer. Sleep well.